My wife and I bought our first house in February of 2010. It was perfect, the kind of house we'd always pictured ourselves in. A quiet street, a big yard, warm light through the kitchen windows. We signed the papers and moved in within a week. Those first few weeks were pure bliss. We spent our evenings painting, decorating, arguing playfully over curtain colors and where their furniture should go. It felt like a dream, our dream. But then, small things started to happen. At first, it was nothing major, just strange enough to notice. Items upstairs would be moved. A framed photo from the bedroom would suddenly be sitting on the hallway dresser. My wife's hairbrush went missing, only to turn up days later in the guest room. I joked that she was getting forgetful. She didn't laugh. Then came the noises. Creaks, pops, faint thuds, mostly from upstairs. It was a new house, so I convinced myself it was just settling. Every house makes sounds like that, right? Weeks went by, and I stopped paying attention to it, until one October evening. Halloween decorations had started to appear in our neighborhood. Pumpkins, lights, and fake cobwebs strung across porches. My wife and I were in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and talking about what costume party we might go to that year. The house felt warm, cozy, safe. And then, as I turned off the running water, we heard it. A cough. Clear. Human. From upstairs. The sound froze both of us in place. I looked at my wife. Her face drained of color, eyes wide. We didn't have kids, no guests. Every window was shut, every door locked. The TV was off. Someone was in our house. The silence that followed was unbearable. My pulse thundered in my ears as I grabbed the sharpest knife I could find. My wife's hands trembled as she dialed 911. She whispered to the operator that there was someone upstairs. I stood at the bottom of the staircase, staring up into the dark. The only sound was my own breathing, until I heard it again. The same sound the house always made, but now it meant something. Someone was moving. The police arrived within minutes. Thank God they were patrolling nearby. 2 officers entered, guns drawn. "Stay behind us," one said quietly. We followed him up the stairs. He called out, "This is the police. Is anyone upstairs?" No response. The tension was suffocating. My entire body was shaking. We checked the first bedroom, empty. The closets, empty. The half bath, empty. My office, empty. For a moment, I almost laughed from relief. Maybe it was just the house. Maybe we'd both imagined it. But then, just as we turned to leave my office, right above us, the officer froze, his eyes darting to the ceiling. In my office closet, there was a small, square attic access. I had forgotten it even existed. He pulled the string, and the wooden stairs unfolded with a soft groan. He took a deep breath, flashlight in one hand, gun in the other, and called out, "This is the police. If someone's up there, show yourself." Nothing. He climbed halfway up the steps and shone the light into the darkness. And then, I'll never forget the sound he made. A sharp inhale, like he'd just seen something he couldn't quite believe. There, kneeling in the shadows of our attic, was a man, mid-40s, scruffy beard, dirty clothes, pale eyes, staring straight back at us, completely still. The officer raised his gun and ordered him down. The man didn't move for a few seconds, then slowly climbed down, silent, unblinking. He didn't say a word, didn't resist, didn't even make eye contact. When they handcuffed him and led him outside, my wife broke down crying. Later, at the police station, we learned who he was, or at least what they could find out: a homeless man. He had been living in the house before we bought it, sneaking in through an unlocked door while it was still on the market. He said he stayed in the attic, quiet as a ghost, every night. For an entire month after we moved in. He never left. He would listen to us cook, talk, and sleep, and when he heard us coming upstairs, he'd slip silently into the attic and wait until morning. That Halloween, I couldn't stop imagining him up there, sitting in the dark, listening. Every time the house creaked after that, my heart would stop. We changed every lock, sealed the attic, and installed cameras, but even now, sometimes at night, when the wind is still, I swear I can hear that same soft creak above the ceiling, and I can't help but wonder, what if he never really left? Back in high school, around the end of my junior year, it became a trend to explore haunted places. Every weekend, a group of about 30 of us would carpool to abandoned houses or secluded forests. During the weekdays at school, we'd exchange stories and hunt for more places to explore. We had this reckless courage about us, as if nothing could scare us. One day, a friend of mine, older by several years, told me how he and his friends used to do the same thing when they were our age. His childhood home backed up to a huge farm. He said they spent their days fishing or hanging out there, so they knew the place well. According to him, the owner was a deeply religious man, maybe a priest or a pastor, who owned both the farm and a small house on the property. But the story took a dark turn. The man was arrested for murder and later died in prison, leaving the farm abandoned and forgotten. My friend said that when he and his buddies heard the news of the man's death, they decided to explore the property. The windows were shattered and the front door creaked open when they pushed it. Inside, they laughed, tried to scare each other, the way kids do, until he went upstairs. At the top of the stairs, in the middle of the open room, stood a coffin. At first, he didn't realize what it was. He walked closer, curious, brushing dust off the side, and then it hit him. A coffin in an abandoned house. They bolted out of there instantly. The way he told it gave me chills. His voice, his pauses, it felt real. Maybe too real. That story had happened about 15 years before he told me, but I couldn't get it out of my head. So a few of my adventurous friends and I decided we had to see the place for ourselves. I knew where he used to live, so we figured if we just went behind his old house, we'd find the farm, and hopefully the house. We planned to bring everyone out on the weekend, but before that, one of my friends and I wanted to scout it out first to see if it was even real. After football practice one weekday, we drove down to the street where my friend used to live. Sure enough, there was a massive farm behind the neighborhood. We quietly cut through someone's backyard and stepped through the brush until we found ourselves standing in a wild, overgrown field. As we pushed through the weeds, we spotted it. At the edge of a small hill about 100 yards away was the house. We decided we'd come too far to back out now. As we approached, I noticed a huge black bird perched on the roof. It didn't move at first, but when we got within 20 feet of the house, it suddenly flew off, not away, but to a nearby tree, where it just watched us. We exchanged nervous glances, trying to laugh it off, but there was something unsettling about that bird. The house itself looked like every haunted house you see in movies, only worse because it was real. Broken windows, rotting wood, crooked shadows across the porch. There was even an old gravestone sunken in the front yard. We felt the weight of silence pressing on us. The front door was jammed, so we played rock, paper, scissors to decide who'd climb through the open window. I lost. I went in second, though, not wanting to stand outside alone. Inside, time had stopped. Everything was still there, furniture, decorations, even framed pictures on the walls, although they were now faded and water-stained. We crept around whispering, jumping at every creak. Eventually, we gathered enough courage to climb the staircase. Every step moaned under our weight. When we reached the top, the room was empty. No coffin, no furniture, nothing but dust and light streaming through broken glass. We started laughing then, relieved, teasing each other for being scared. Maybe the story had just been that, a story. But then, as we explored the kitchen, I noticed something strange. A tiny door, about knee-high, tucked behind a counter. Without thinking, I opened it. Behind the door was a narrow, stone stairwell leading down into darkness. The space was so small you'd have to crawl to get through. Even just looking at it made my stomach turn. About halfway down, the stairs turned a corner, disappearing into shadow. But right at the bend, half hidden by the wall, was a large, rectangular wooden box. A coffin, exactly like he described. For a moment, we both froze. Then, without saying a word, we turned and scrambled out the window, both trying to squeeze through at once. I don't know what it looked like from outside, but it must have been ridiculous. Two terrified teenagers tripping over each other and sprinting through waist-high weeds like our lives depended on it.
When we finally stopped, gasping for breath, I looked back toward the house. That same black bird was back, perched right on the roof, staring at us. We ran faster. Looking back now, it's easy to laugh about how we reacted, but the timing of it still creeps me out. That was the weekend before Halloween, the one night we planned to bring the whole group out there. We never went back. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe the bird was just a bird. But part of me still believes that whatever watched over that house didn't want anyone coming back.
When I was around 5 years old, my parents purchased a piece of land from our neighbor whose house and yard were right behind ours, basically making our backyard much larger. Part of that land included an old stone gazebo that dated back to around 1850. This was around the year 2000, so it was about 150 years old at the time. Our neighbor didn't have a ton of information about the gazebo. It actually predated her house and ours, which were built in the 1950s and 1930s, respectively. In fact, it even predated the entire neighborhood. Most of the oldest houses around were from the 1910s or 1920s, and before that, the whole area had been used as a military testing site for mustard gas and other weapons during World War I. So it was strange that this large, almost 400 square foot stone gazebo had stood there for so long, like a forgotten piece of history, sitting quietly in the middle of what used to be nothing but fields. Anyway, as soon as my parents bought the land, I started having horrible nightmares every single night. In those dreams, I would be standing outside in the yard at night, staring into the dark mouth of the gazebo. I could just barely make out all these twisted, pained faces in the shadows, like people sitting on the floor screaming and crying. Sometimes the old fireplace inside would be lit, and I'd see a dark figure step forward and jump straight into the flames. It terrified me. My mom was especially disturbed because she was convinced I could sense things. She's not a superstitious person. She's a professional, logical woman, but even she couldn't explain how vivid my nightmares were. I'd wake up sweating, sometimes crying, and I'd refuse to look out the window toward that gazebo. Even talking about it now makes me uneasy, like I can still feel those same cold chills down my back. And then came Halloween. That's when things got really strange. That year, my parents had decided to put in a pool and also reinforce the gazebo's foundation, since the stonework was starting to crumble. The workers were out there late into the evening, right on Halloween night, digging near the gazebo and under the old flagstone floor. The air was cold and foggy, and the last of the trick-or-treaters were heading home. Then one of the workers called my dad over. They had uncovered bones, human bones, and a few large stones with names carved into them. The names didn't match any records we could find. It wasn't just one or two bones either. It looked like part of a burial. The workers were pale and didn't want to keep digging. The police came, looked things over, and basically said, "Huh, weird," before taking a few photos and leaving. Nothing else ever came of it. But after that night, the nightmares stopped. Completely. And for some reason, we never used the gazebo again.